It's 2023, and the US debt ceiling crisis is upon us. The Treasury Department started taking extraordinary measures to pay federal government bills as the US hit the debt limit earlier this year, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said. With so much at stake, it's important to understand the implications of this crisis and how it affects the US economy. In this video, we'll take a look at the US debt ceiling crisis of 2023 and how it could potentially impact the US economy. History of the US debt ceiling. The US debt ceiling has been in place since 1917 and was created as a way to manage the US budget, allowing Congress to approve specific levels of government spending. It was initially set at $11.5 billion, but was increased over time to accommodate the nation's growing debt. In 2021, under President Biden's administration, the US debt ceiling rose to a staggering $34.4 trillion. Congress has long used the debt ceiling to gain leverage in budget negotiations, though these disputes can often lead to deadlock in political processes. As a result, Congress has routinely raised the debt ceiling in order to continue financing government operations. The last major debt ceiling dispute occurred in 2011 when the Republicans and Democrats were unable to agree on a budget deal and the US risked defaulting on its loans. Fortunately, a last-minute agreement was reached, and the US avoided defaulting. Yellen is pushing Congress to pass a bill to lift the country's $31.4 trillion debt limit and expects the Treasury can keep paying its bills at least until June. What happens when the US hits its debt ceiling? By now, reaching the debt ceiling, the government has reached its legal limit for how much money it can borrow to finance operations. The US government now has two options: either raise the debt ceiling or default on its debt obligations. Raising the debt ceiling is an option that is typically favored by both Democrats and Republicans, and involves the US Congress voting to increase the debt limit. However, when Congress fails to do so, the US is forced to default on its debt payments and risks economic and political repercussions. Defaulting on US debt could have severe consequences, such as increased borrowing costs, damaged credit ratings, and a weakened economy. The US is also likely to face a financial crisis if it defaults on its $1 trillion debt, since its creditors may choose to call in their loans, leading to a massive outflow of capital from the US economy. Overall, hitting the US debt ceiling can have serious implications for the US politics and economics. That's why it is important for Congress to act quickly when the debt ceiling approaches to ensure that the US does not default on its obligations and face a potential financial crisis. The impact of a US default. The ripple effects of such a default could reach far and wide, potentially leading to a $1 trillion loss in assets and investments. If the debt ceiling is not raised by Congress, the Treasury will be unable to borrow any additional funds to cover the government's bills. This could mean that important social programs and safety net benefits, such as Social Security and Medicare, could go unfunded. At the same time, defaulting on debt obligations could also lead to higher interest rates, resulting in additional costs for borrowers and increasing the cost of borrowing money for the US government. This could further strain the budget of the federal government and can lead to higher taxes for its citizens. Additionally, a US default could also lead to an economic downturn. Since foreign governments and investors often purchase US Treasury securities, a US default could hurt their confidence in the US economy and lead them to pull their investments. This could lead to a large sell-off of US assets and result in a massive financial loss. In short, the impact of a US default would be devastating. Not only would it lead to an economic downturn, but it could also cause political turmoil and hardship for millions of Americans. It's essential that Congress act quickly to raise the debt ceiling and prevent a default. Why is this a problem for Joe Biden? The US debt ceiling is a long-standing problem in US politics, and it has become even more pressing in recent years as the US national debt continues to grow, now reaching a staggering $34.4 trillion. Joe Biden has been left with the unenviable task of tackling this huge financial burden, while also attempting to make good on his campaign promises. One of the key issues Biden will face is the impact of a potential US default if the US debt ceiling is not raised before the Treasury can no longer keep paying its bills, estimated to be in June 2023. If a US default were to occur, it would cause a massive disruption in the global economy, leading to serious economic consequences for citizens in the United States and around the entire world. It would also put Biden in a difficult position politically, potentially making it difficult for him to achieve any further policy objectives during his time in office. Clearly, Joe Biden faces a challenge when it comes to dealing with the US debt ceiling crisis. Some House Republicans have suggested they'd push for spending cuts as part of a debt ceiling agreement. Biden will need to find creative solutions that can both reduce the size of the national debt and avoid a potential US default, all while staying true to his campaign pledges. It will not be an easy feat, but it is one that Biden must overcome if he hopes to leave a lasting legacy as the president.